Welcome to Musings with me. I'm Lisa, and I hope that wherever this finds you in your day, it finds you with the love and blessings it is intended with. So enjoy this episode, and I'll catch you on the other side. Hey everybody, welcome to Musings with me. I'm Lisa, and today we're having a look at a topic that is really close to my heart, like all of them probably. It's about creating space for communication within our families. Now, this isn't just about talking more, it's about really listening and building an environment where our kids, especially our teens, feel safe and heard. So let's start with a metaphor. Imagine you're at work, and every time you approach your boss with a concern or an idea, they snap at you or they cut you off before you've even finished your sentence. And how long would you keep going back to them? How honest would you be? Probably not very. Now let's flip that scenario to our homes. If we're reacting instead of responding, losing our cool or jumping in before our kids even finish speaking, we're doing the same thing. We're teaching them that it's not safe to share, that their voices don't really matter. But here's the thing. Communication is like a garden. If we want it to flourish, we have to create the right environment. This sort of carries on from a little pot theory a little bit, which I did say this one was coming. So I'm sort of staying with that theme of gardens and pots and flowers. And here, let's just get into it. It's not enough to just plant the seeds. We have to tend to them, water them, and give them space to grow. So let's talk about what is really key in this, which is active listening. It's like the watering can of the communication world. So this is the secret sauce to building trust and connection. Active listening means being fully present, not just waiting for your turn to speak. It's listening to understand, not to respond. And that's a really different space to be in. You are listening to understand what that person is speaking about. You are not listening to get in there next. And it's an absolute game changer. I worked with kids at school who were mediators, and we talked all about these kinds of ways of listening, which we're getting into in this podcast. So imagine you're in a conversation with your teen. They're telling you about a rough day at school, and instead of planning your response or thinking about how to fix it, you're just focused on their words, their tone, and their emotions. You're not just hearing them, you're really listening. You're like a gardener with a watering can, nourishing the relationship so that it can grow. My fingers are like wriggling so that like little growth tendrils. So let's say your teen mentions they're struggling with a friend who's been, distant lately. Instead of jumping in with advice like, well, maybe they're just busy, or you should talk to them about it, you shift into asking open-ended questions. So things like, how does that make you feel? Or what do you think might be going on? This gives them the space to explore their feelings and thoughts, showing them that you're not just there to fix things, but to truly understand them. Active listening also means picking up on what's not being said. So if your kid is unusually quiet or evasive, that's a signal to dig a little deeper, but gently. Not, I know there's something you're not telling me, what the hell is it? It's maybe they're not ready to talk yet. Maybe you just stay present and patient and show them that you're a safe place whenever they're ready to open up. Maybe you even say that. Maybe you put it to them as, okay, maybe you're not ready to talk yet. That's okay. Just come and talk to me when you are. I'll always be here when you're ready to open up about that. So here's another example. Maybe during a family dinner, instead of steering the conversation, you let your kids lead. If they bring up a topic, you encourage them to elaborate, asking questions that show genuine interest. This not only helps them feel valued, but it reinforces that what they say matters to you. And this isn't just with our children. Try this with other people around you, and you'll really begin to notice that it actually has an impact on how they choose to speak with you, because they actually start to feel heard because you are engaging it with them in a different way, and you will start to hear more of what they really want to tell you. So by practicing that active listening, you're like that gardener, ensuring that each plant gets the right amount of water. You're cultivating that environment, or that family environment, where communication can thrive, where everyone feels heard, where they feel understood and respected. It's not always easy, especially when life gets busy, and I can definitely tell you that I do not get it right all the time. But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And just like a well-watered garden, because we're going to stay with that metaphor, your relationships will actually flourish. Here's some other ideas for creating space for active listening. Hold your tongue. So when your children or teen or partner or friend starts talking, don't literally hold your tongue, but maybe just put a finger over your lips and breathe. This tiny pause might give them the space to say something they've never shared before. And it's human nature to want to fill the silence. So when we just hold for that moment longer, sometimes we just allow enough gap for them to say the thing that maybe they wouldn't have said if we had jumped in. Another thing you could do is family dinner conversations. Make those family dinners a ritual where everyone gets to share their highs and their lows of the day. It's a really simple way to connect, and it shows your kids that their voices matter. Another way to bring in that active listening, be curious. Be really curious, like an investigator, but without judgment. When your child tells you something, instead of reacting immediately, try responding with curiosity. Ask questions that show you're interested in their world, but are not about judging what they did or didn't do, right or wrong. And it's amazing what they'll open up about when they feel genuinely heard. Another point that comes into this is about creating safe spaces. Sometimes kids need a bit of privacy to talk, and consider taking them out for a one-on-one walk or a drive, or take them to a cafe where they feel less pressure and more freedom to speak their mind. Maybe it's to a park where they get on the swing, and because they are doing something different, they might start to open up and speak more about what's going on. And lead by example. Share your own highs and lows. Show them that it's okay to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and to talk about it. This creates that model for open communication that they can follow. And then there will be relapses. Those are like the weeds in our garden. Now, let's be really real here. There will be relapses. I've been practicing this for many moons, and I still relapse because we're human, and that's how it is doing human things. Communication is like a set point in our brains, and we've got these neural pathways. Think of them like a well-worn path, and they've become our autopilot. So if you've been reacting instead of responding for years, it's going to take some time to change that pattern. And that's okay. The whole point is it's about making the change, not just going, oh, well, it's too hard, I can't be bothered. Think of these moments where you relapse as like those weeds in your garden. They are going to pop up, but with patience and persistence, you can pull them out and create a space where your communication can truly thrive. Imagine you've been working on responding calmly to your team, and your team comes to you with a problem. You've been doing great, and then one day you totally snap. Your old habit of reacting jumps out of your gob before you can even stop it. It's like spotting a prickle that suddenly appeared in your neatly tended garden. It's frustrating, but it doesn't mean you've failed. It's like you wouldn't abandon your entire garden over a few weeds. Or, I don't know, I'm not speaking for myself in the garden respect, because my garden is overgrown with weeds, but my communication garden is not. So you don't need to give up on your progress in communication. Here's another example. Let's say you're trying to practice active listening, really focusing on what your child is saying without jumping in or getting distracted. But one evening you catch yourself scrolling on your phone while they're talking, only half listening. That's another weed. You might feel disappointed in yourself, but remember, this is a natural part of the process. The key is to recognize it. Gently pull that weed out by apologizing and re-engaging in the conversation, and then refocus on nurturing that new habit of listening with full attention. Or consider a time when your child tests your patience. Maybe they've ignored your request for the upteenth time and you lose your cool. That old reaction self kicks in and you find yourself raising your voice. It's like spotting that stubborn thistle that's taken root. But instead of letting it take over, you can acknowledge that it happened, make amends, and continue working on cultivating a calmer, more responsive way of communicating. Relapse is a part of the growth process. Each time that little weed pops up, it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to adjust, and an opportunity to strengthen those new, healthier communication habits. So over time, the garden of your relationship becomes richer and more resilient with fewer weeds and way more thriving plants. And now let's get into the different types of listening, like the light and the shade of listening. So let's talk about the different ways we listen, because not all listening is created equal. Listening can be like painting with light and shade. It can bring that depth and that warmth to our conversation, or it can cast a complete shadow over them. So we might not even realize it, but how we listen can either nurture or stifle the growth of our relationships. And you will recognize these as I go through them in your own relationships. You will notice friends that do these, or partners, or children, or where you do it yourself. This is not about blaming you or saying that you are not enough or not doing it well. It's about bringing this up in front of you like a mirror so you can see it and you can become aware of it. And when you are ready to change a little bit, it's not change all of it, it's change a little bit. Then you get to make that change and you get to strengthen your relationships and you get to grow your relationships. And you get to do that with everyone around you, because once you start activating that muscle, you can use that muscle to do a whole pile of lifting in other areas. So another one of those shadow and light ones are the me too listening. And that's when you're not actually listening to the other person, but instead you're waiting for the chance to relate the conversation back to yourself. So imagine your kids or someone else are telling you about a really tough day that they've had at work or at school, and they're pouring out their frustrations. And instead of focusing on their experience, you're in your head busy thinking of a similar time when you felt the same way. And that is an automatic response. We do that as humans. We look for something within us that connects and relates to what somebody else is going through. But what that does is it takes us out of being in that total space of actively listening into digging around in our own stuff. It's sort of like someone talking to us and we're digging around in the box of our history to try and find that little trinket of information that we can then come back and say, oh, that reminds me of when I was at school, or that reminds me of work the other day. You've unintentionally made the conversation about you. So that doesn't mean that there aren't occasions where you can offer up examples of how it might have been for you, but that's not your first port of call. Your first port of call is to be in a space of actively listening. The me too is where you start to notice, and you will become more aware of it now that you know what it is. You start to notice that you either do this regularly, or you might even start to notice that there's certain friends or people that you engage with who do this to you regularly, where you come to them with something that you need to talk about and they me to it. Oh yes, well that reminds me of. So it's like casting a shadow over the moment. What was their time to be heard, or your time to be heard if it's in a relationship where someone else is doing it to you, where it's the time to be heard and supported has now shifted to being about the other person's story. And while it can be comforting to relate, sometimes the other person just needs the light of your attention on them without interruption. They just need the spotlight on them, and you just hold that space for them. Another shade of non-active listening is busy listening. And I know as a parent, I have done this countless times, and so have my children and people I know, and we all do it. We nod along while we're mentally running through something else. We're grocery listing, we're scrolling on our phones, we are cleaning the bench up, whatever it is. And no, we haven't always got time to stop and give uninterrupted acknowledgement of what somebody is saying. However, imagine your person who is needing you to listen is trying to talk to you about something important, and you're half listening while cooking dinner or checking emails, and they sense your divided attention. I know for myself, if it's my husband or my kids who are doing something else, even though they are physically there, emotionally, they are 1,000 miles away. And it's trying to water a plant with a trickle. It might keep it alive, but it will not thrive. And when we are not fully present, we miss the little nuances of what's being said. And more importantly, we miss the opportunity to strengthen our bond. We miss the opportunity to engage and listen and be present with that person. And there is nothing like feeling someone who is completely present in their listening when you have something big to talk about. Another one is listening to interject. And this is when you're not really listening to understand, but you're instead searching for a gap in the conversation to insert your own thoughts. Slightly different from the me too, along the same lines, but slightly different. So picture this: your partner is venting about a stressful day, and you're just waiting for the right moment to jump in with advice or your own complaints. Or the moment they take a pause to take a breath, you dive in, well, you should have blah, blah, blah. Or that's nothing, wait till you hear about what happened to me today. Or I've had conversations where I've been talking and then the person who is with me it's not even related. It's like, oh, did you know that this comedian has done such and such? It's not even remotely related. So this type of listening is like pruning a plant too harshly. It stunts the growth rather than nurturing it. And instead of feeling heard, for myself included, you feel cut off and you feel unheard and you feel unimportant. Like, what's the point in me even speaking to you? Because you were not even listening to what I had to say. You were off in a completely other topic and then brought that to the board. And that makes you feel not valued. So if we flip that script, what if we focus on listening to listen? Like really tuning into the other person with the intention of understanding them, not just hearing words. This type of listening is like providing the perfect amount of sunlight. This is that active listening, and the perfect amount of water to a growing plant. It nurtures, it supports, and it allows that relationship to blossom. When we flip the script into listening to listen, that's when our person comes to us upset about maybe falling out with a friend or something that's going on at school or work or in a partnership. Instead of jumping in with our own experiences or advice, we just listen. We nod, we empathize. Oh. You know, sometimes that's all they want to hear. Oh, really? And you let them get everything off their chest without interruption. When they're done, you might ask, how did that make you feel? Or what do you think you'll do next? And it validates, I just want to really get this home, it validates their feelings, but also it empowers them to process the situation in their own way. It's like giving that plant room to grow in the direction it needs rather than forcing it into a shape you think is best. So another example of this is your partner's talking about a tough decision they need to make at work. Instead of offering solutions right away, you ask questions that help them explore their thoughts. Maybe it's something like, what are you most worried about? Or what outcome would make you feel the best? This way you're guiding them, but they're still steering the conversation. It's like offering a support or a trellis for a vine to climb. It's not directing the path, but it's supporting that natural growth. And then we can turn that listening into the amazing light of becoming aware of these different types of listening and consciously choosing to listen. We can transform our conversations into spaces of growth and connection. It's about being present. It's about being open. And it's allowing the other person to truly be seen and heard. Just like that well-tended garden, it flourishes with the right balance of light and shade. Our relationships thrive when we offer the right kind of listening. And what else could we want to get from a relationship than to be heard? To be heard is such a valuable gift. To actually be heard and feel heard and have a space where we are not judged and we are given that opportunity to voice how we're feeling and have someone really listen to us. So creating space for communication in our families is one of the most powerful things we can do as parents. It's not always easy and it takes time and practice, but the rewards are so worth it. A stronger connection with our kids, our partners and extended family, a deeper understanding of their world, and the trust that will carry them and us through the ups and downs of life. So the next time your teen comes to you with a problem or just wants to talk, remember, don't literally hold your tongue, but hold your tongue. Create that safe space. and listen with your heart. You might just be amazed at what you hear. If you found this helpful, let's keep the conversation going. What's one thing you can do today to create space for communication in your family? Thanks for joining me on this journey today. Until next time, tending to your garden of communication and watch it bloom. May this land for you with the intention it is meant with love, with understanding, and with a good dose of when the bleep are you going to do it, because tomorrow never comes. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in as always. And I'm sending mountains of love to you. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.